Our second chapter in Lesson 2 is safety. Safety in the workplace. Creating a safe and healthy work environment is not only a good way to run a business, it is also a legal obligation. What are the benefits of having a safe work environment? You can reduce the number of injuries and illnesses in the workplace. You can reduce premiums for workers' compensation policies. You can reduce the cost of retraining employees, increase productivity through lower absenteeism, increase morale and profits. Here's our outline. Safety standards and safety training, substance abuse policies and safety equipment, emergency action plan and emergency medical plan, maintenance of registries, safety standards for the handling of chemicals, underground public services security, electricity line safety, protection and prevention of falls and lead protection, other security practices, employee rights, sanctions, and fines. All employers are subject to the requirements of the federal government's Occupational Safety and Health Administration, OSHA. In Oregon, the Health and Safety Division, known as the Oregon OSHA, is responsible for administering and supervising compliance with the laws established by federal OSHA. Contractors are responsible for knowing the safety standards in Oregon for construction sites. You can implement these safety standards in your construction projects by developing a safety program, conducting safety meetings with staff, and quickly correcting any violation. Safety training. If you are the sole owner of a single employee company or a board member who does not work on the jobs, you are not required to hold safety meetings. Otherwise, if you have at least one employee besides yourself, you must provide new employee training and sign off on safety procedures and regular training sessions. These can happen in daily 10-minute sessions on the job site. Have a safety committee or conduct safety meetings. Put up OSHA Occupational Safety and Health poster in the office or job shack. There's our second poster. We've got the poster from the U.S. Department of Labor on wage information, and now we've got the OSHA Occupational Safety and Health poster in that office or job shack. Now, this requirement comes when you have employees. This does not mean that you are not responsible for the safety of your team of subcontractors that you bring to the job site. You just don't have the regulations, but you certainly have the responsibility. Substance abuse puts workplace safety at risk. Substance abuse in the workplace could result in an increase in claims for workers' compensation, medical costs, absences, turnover of employees, and a reduction in productivity. Oregon OSHA and the CCB encourage you to develop a drug-free workplace program together with your employees and distribute it as a written policy for them to read and sign. Now notice, this is an encouragement. This is not a regulation at this point, but it is encouraged by both OSHA and the CCB. Safety equipment. The use of certain safety equipment may be required by law, depending on the type of work you perform. You might need to provide helmets, safety shoes, and boots, goggles, gloves, fall protection, ear protection, respirators, overalls, and facial shields. The emergency action plan. Again, for those of you who are going to begin with a team of subcontractors, in my opinion, you still need an emergency action plan. Oregon law requires that an emergency action plan be communicated to employees. You have to commit it. You have to have it written if you have 10 or more employees, or oral if you are under 10 employees. This plan describes how employees will respond to emergency situations such as fires, toxic chemical spills, extreme weather, and floods. Include procedures for reporting a fire or other emergency evacuation, operating or shutting down equipment before evacuating, and performing a rescue or first aid. You also want an emergency medical plan. Employers must develop an emergency medical plan to provide emergency care to employees who are injured or acquire a serious illness at work. Employers must also provide a first aid kit. Safety record keeping. OSHA, that's the safety people, they require employers with more than 10 employees to complete Forms 300 and 300A of OSHA and a Form 801 of DCBS. That's the Department of Consumer and Business Services. However, Oregon OSHA may also require that employers with fewer employees maintain these records. How are you going to find this out? You're going to find it out when you create your payroll and you have your workers' compensation policy. They will send someone out to talk to you about your record-keeping responsibilities. When you look at this, memorize 300, 300A, and 801. There is no 600, there's no 800, there's no 900. These are the three forms that you need to be aware of. 300, 300A, and Form 801. The Form 300 keeps records of serious injuries and work-related illnesses at work. The Form 300A then summarizes those injuries and illness in the previous year's work, and it should be posted in a visible place right near the OSHA poster and the wage and hour poster from the U.S. Department of Labor. So Form 300A is the summary. Form DCBS 801 reports an injury or illness at work for a workers' compensation claim. It also gets filled out by both the employer and the employee. Employers need to keep these forms for 5 years after the form in which the records were made, which explains why I have all those boxes in my garage, even though I closed my company 5 years ago. Record keeping. Oregon OSHA reporting timelines. We've got some timelines on some kinds of things that need to be reported. Catastrophes and deaths at work within 8 hours after the incident has occurred. Hospitalizations, amputations, loss of an eye within 24 hours. Very pleased to say that in our 66 years, we had no catastrophes and deaths and no losses of eyes or amputations. But it happens. The following are considered first aid treatments and do not need to be recorded. Now, they have this long list of things that they're going to tell you about that do not have to be recorded because they are first aid treatments. It's a good idea for you to know some of these or get a feel for it, because the things that are more serious than this, you do have to record. administering non-prescription medications, cleaning, flushing, or soaking wounds on the surface of the skin, applying wound coverings like bandages, gauze pads, etc., using hot or cold therapy, using non-rigid means of support like elastic bandages, wraps, and back belts, using temporary immobilization devices like splints and slings and backboards while transporting an injured employee, drilling a fingernail or toenail to relieve pressure or drain fluid from a blister. Oh, I've seen that done, and I can't believe that it's only a first aid treatment, but that's all it is. Providing eye patches and applying finger guards, removing splinters from areas other than the eye, and administering fluids for relief of heat stress. Boy, we've had some heat this summer. Safety standards for the handling of chemicals. Now we're thinking about chemicals in our workplaces. The Oregon OSHA Hazard Communication Standards apply to all workplaces where employees may be exposed to hazardous chemicals. Records of exposure and medical treatment related to hazardous chemicals must be kept by the employer for a duration of employment plus 30 years. Welcome to the world of becoming an employer. Oregon Utility Safety. Contractors must identify all underground utilities in the area affected by construction prior to excavation, as well as notify the utility companies at least 2 days before beginning excavation. But to do this, you can contact the Oregon Utility Notification Center, one-stop shop. You call them, you give them your site, you tell them what you're going to do, and they will get a hold of all the affected utility. Lead. I want to talk about lead. Oregon OSHA regulates lead exposure for workers. Exposure should be no more than 50 micrograms of lead per cubic meter of air, averaged over a period of 8 hours. Just think of micrograms, 50 micrograms over 8 hours. That's our lead exposure limit. Employers must supply respirators at no cost to employees and provide worker training and perform regular equipment inspections. Use engineering controls such as exhaust ventilation, encapsulation of lead particles, substituting comparable products that don't contain lead, and isolating the lead exposure area. These are engineering controls. Other safety practices. Now here's the good part. You can look up everything you need to know. Oregon OSHA provides a complete list of A to Z topics for safety practices on its website. Topics include detonations and explosives, excavations, and traffic control, to name a few. So this is where you go to find out.